Hi, this is Ms. Delosier, and this is your QuAD on the first of the pedigree charts that you have. This is a QuAD on widow's peak. And so first thing I want to look at is the definition of these symbols. So if you see a square that is unshaded, that means it's a male that is unaffected by the widow's peak. And if you see a square that is shaded, that is going to be a male that does have widow's peak. Similarly, a circle that is unshaded is a female without widow's peak, and a circle that is shaded is a female that has widow's peak. Just in general, when you see two lines linked, like the square and the circle at the top, that indicates that they are the parents or it's married. And then the group that is directly below them would be the offspring, and you see them connected by a line. So you can see how the parents are connected from a line directly between them, and then the offspring actually have little lines going up to like a big bracket. So we're going to look at this pedigree, and you'll see that the woman on the left has a widow's peak, which is like the little point on her hairline, and the woman on the right has a straight hairline. And so what we want to do is we want to figure out, is widow's peak dominant or recessive, just by looking at the pedigree chart. So we can see which individuals are affected and which ones are not affected. And so what we want to look at is we want to find a group of individuals where either both parents and most of the offspring are affected, or both parents and most of the offspring are not affected. But you need to have at least one offspring that's different, and you really want to have both offspring the same. It makes it easier. So what we're going to look at is in the third generation. The top row is the first generation, the second row is the second generation. We're going to look at this bottom row right between the women's faces. We're going to look at that third generation. And if you look, that one's different. That's the one that's going to help us because she is different from the parents. If you look, both parents, male and female, are affected. They both have widow's peak. And she has a straight hairline, whereas her sister also has a widow's peak. Now I want you to think about it. If both of her parents have a widow's peak and she does not have a widow's peak, the only way for that to be possible is if she is homozygous recessive and her parents are heterozygotes, because that means that she could be little w, and have a straight hairline, and both of her parents could be big W, little w, and have a widow's peak. So that would mean that her sister could have one big W or two big W's, and I don't really know. And that went really fast, and I didn't mean for it to go that fast, but we're going to backtrack it and we're going to look at it. So if you look at the first generation and the second generation, if we figured out that the only way to have a straight hairline is to have the recessive trait, the recessive little w trait, that means that all of the other unshaded, the unaffected straight hairlines in the entire pedigree are going to be little w. So that's why that went that fast, is because anybody else that's going to be unshaded is going to have to be homozygous recessive. They just do. So now we're going to use that information to try and figure out the genotypes of the other individuals in the pedigree. So if you look at the first generation, the first male has to be a heterozygote. How do I know that he's a heterozygote? Well, he's having offspring that are both affected and unaffected. And the only way that that would work is if he can give a little w and his wife can give a little w, but he could give a dominant widow's peak trait, and the wife is clearly only going to give a little w. And you could do that by doing a Punnett square, but this is a pretty easy example, so I don't think you need to do a Punnett square here. That means that that first female that's affected, the first purple shaded one in the second generation, has to have a capital W, but we don't know what that second trait is, and it doesn't matter. And then that last individual in the first generation is going to have also be heterozygous, and I know that because they're also having a homozygous recessive daughter that has a straight hairline. And the only way that that's possible is if both parents are providing a little w. So that's it, and what we talk about here is that the mode of inheritance here is going to be autosomal dominant. We know that the widow's peak trait is dominant, and autosomal just means it's not on the X or the Y chromosome. So that's it. I hope that's helpful, and go and work on your stuff for the day.